Welcome to Newswire LA. It's been 6 months since we last saw Jackie Lacey. Today she's in charge of the largest district attorney's office in the U.S. Well, we're going to get an update on how she's doing personally and professionally. All of this and more right after the credits. Good morning and welcome to Newswire LA. I'm your host, Chin Thomas Angsey, and this morning we are with DA Jackie Lacey. We're following up. We're doing a 6-month follow-up with you to see how things are going since you've assumed office. Good morning, DA Lacey. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Chen. It's good to be back with Newswire.
How's life been since you've been sworn in as the DA of Los Angeles County?
It's been awesome. It's been a wonderful experience. The first 6 months, we've been extraordinarily busy. We have a running joke in my household. I told my husband once I got elected, things would return to normal. They have not, in the sense that I'm still doing long days, 16-hour days, but I have the best job in the world as far as I'm concerned. I'm very proud of the work that I do. I'm very stimulated, certainly intellectually, very challenged, and as far as I'm concerned, the DA's office is running really well right now.
Did you have any private celebrations with your family, just something just for all of you to celebrate this achievement?
I wish I'd had time. It's funny what runs through your mind. Most of that day is a blur. I certainly remember the ceremony, the hour-long ceremony. But I remember, and people have to remember that as elected officials, we're human beings. During the picture taking, all I kept thinking about was getting my daughter to the airport at 6:30 because she had to fly back to Boston. And so my goal was to get all of these pictures taken and get her safely to the airport so she could get home. So part of me was there. Part of me was, let's get this through. Let's get through this so that I can fulfill my duty as a mom. But what an awesome experience. That was one of those days where everything went right. Everybody has, I'm sure, a special event that they're planning, and they hope all the details will fall into place. At my swearing-in ceremony, having it at my alma mater, the University of Southern California, having it in the Galen Center, having nearly all of my loved ones there, featuring the Inner City Youth Orchestra, how they played, listening to the speeches, and really delivering for the first time my vision and my story. I'll never forget it, and I'm very grateful that I was allowed that day. We have not had a chance to celebrate. My husband and I took about a week off in January. But the job, when you sign up for this job, when we say hit the ground running, that is really what's expected. You have to be able to run that office from before the minute you were sworn in. And so a lot of my time is spent being devoted to that office. My sister says, I look forward to having you back.
Did your daughter make it to the airport on time?
Absolutely. We got there in time. We got a chance to hug her and give her last minute, slip her money at the last minute, which is people who have kids across country, or no matter how old they are, you're always trying to help them out financially. And we absolutely made it to the airport on time. And when we drove back to our home with my son and his girlfriend and my husband, all of us said, we've got to go to sleep. And it was way before 9 o'clock, but we got to go to bed. But yeah, that was our celebration.
Now, looking back at the campaign, it was about 2 years that you guys were out on the lines trying to make this happen. When you look back at the campaign and you look at it in your rearview mirror, is there anything that you're proud of that you did during that campaign? Are there is there anything you would do differently?
Mm. It's so hard to say. It was 24 months. It was a marathon. I'm so grateful for the mistakes I made and the successes we had. At one point, the bottom dropped out of my campaign. People don't know that. I was fourth in fundraising. People were writing negative stories about I wasn't serious, I wasn't political, I was a placeholder. And the bottom dropped out in October of 2011. My whole team left in 1 week. But that made way for my new team, which I was convinced once we started working together, it was the best team ever. They believed in me. They believed in my message. They supported my decision not to go negative. We had a strategy that we would win the endorsement of the Los Angeles Times and other media outlets because we think voters read, and that we would bring this victory home without spending a whole lot of money. And it worked. On May of 2012, Mother's Day, when I logged on at 5 a.m. and saw my picture coming up on the LA Times website, which is the first indication you have. You know how it downloads slowly? First indication you have that they're going to endorse you. I thought, this is a sign. This is an incredible sign. So the lessons I learned, I now, when I talk to young people, I tell them about it. Block out all the negative noise in your life. People who tell you you can't, you won't, you don't have enough money, you're not this, you're not that. You got to block that stuff out because you're going to hear that noise in anything that's worthwhile that you're trying to pursue. You need to take that first step because you don't know where your help is going to come from. And this is something I will say to people to the day I die. Sometimes what seems like the impossible is just merely difficult.
And one more question that came up from when you spoke to our Jamie Wright last fall. You were saying that if you won this office, Christmas dinner was not going to be on you. Did you hold on to that promise and pass that job on?
Well, it was more than a promise. It was out of desperation. Christmas dinner normally takes weeks, and during the Christmas holidays is when I was just getting settled into the job. My son Kareem did part of it. We had everybody bring a dish to the Lacey household, and it was the most extraordinary Christmas dinner. And I didn't have to cook a whole lot, just a couple things. I'm a pretty good cook, so there's certain things like my peach cobbler that the family, I don't care if I became president, my family would insist that I make that. So I did do their peach cobblers. I love them. That's kind of a way of I expressed how much I care for them. But yeah, things have certainly changed. I realize that, the people are paying the district attorney a pretty darn good salary to do the work, and so that's what where I've got to spend my time, and that means outsourcing, which means it's another term of saying everybody's got to pitch in and do some of the things that I used to do.
Give us a quick rundown of what the preparation was like for the office to transition from D.A. Cooley to D.A. Lacey.
Even though, Chen, I felt like I was the most prepared, I'd had 12 years on the row, as I like to refer to it here, of participating and helping to run the office. There are things that the district attorney is involved in that others just don't see. And so a lot of surprises, a lot of things where I thought, gee, my name is going out there on this. And the significance of what I say and what I do, how important the community will see that. And so I have a newfound appreciation for my former boss, for the sacrifice he made, 12 years of doing this. It's a tremendous amount of of himself that he gave to this community, to the county of LA. And there is the schedule, which is crazy, and then there's what happens on a daily basis. And there's so much activity. We never know when somebody is going to be paroled, when the next celebrity is going to be arrested, when the next, serial killer or rapist or whatever. And to be able to be prepared to make some decisions with a limited amount of time to gather information requires some nerves of steel.
What's it like, the differences between being second in command and being the person running the office? What's the difference between those two seats, the view?
Well, for those of us who have been in, any kind of school setting, the vice principal of a school is normally the executive, the person who really runs things and makes the business decisions. The person at the top, the principal, is supposed to set the vision, the ethical standards, the principles. They make the bigger decisions, and it is a very different role. And yet the roles really do work in tandem. I think, one of the best chief deputies, notwithstanding that I was the chief deputy, but I have one of the best chief deputies there is. Sharon Matsumoto is knowledgeable, strong. She compliments me a lot in the sense of, I tend to lead with the heart. Sharon is very practical. And those of us who lead with the heart need someone who's practical to sort of say, wait a minute, have you thought about this? On the other hand, those that are practical sometimes need those of us who lead with the heart to say, I know these are the rules, but let's take a chance. Let's go beyond what we've been doing in the past. So the team I've put together of people, I routinely hear, and I love hearing this, that they are some of the best people in the office. They're well respected by their peers. They are smart, and they're prepared. I'm confident with this team, we can meet any challenge that comes our way in the criminal justice system.
You'd call Sharon Matsumoto your Mr. Spock, and you are Captain Kirk. I just had to throw that in there.
Yeah, that could stick.
Gene knows that wasn't on the list of questions.
Yes.
How is the DA Lacey we're seeing today different than candidate Lacey we saw 6 months ago?
Well, first of all, I'm breathing a lot better. Okay. I had a lot of anxiety during the 24 months I was a candidate. It was really strange. We talked a little bit about, the negative noises that you get. And to say I didn't have doubts or bad days on the campaign trail, especially at the very beginning, I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. I lost a lot of sleep. I shed hair. I lost a tremendous amount of weight, which was a good thing. But it was very stressful. But in my quiet moments, I couldn't ignore the voice that said, it's your time. Keep going. It's your time. As DA Lacey, this is my freshman year. That's the way I look at it. And I'm still learning I'm still learning, There are still things I have questions about. But I have accepted this role, realizing that, to he who much has been given, much is required. And although my being elected is being celebrated as breaking some glass ceilings, being the first African American, I am a competitive individual, and I want to be the best DA. So we have 5 goals. I want to see those goals happen. I want us to reach our goals. I want to make a tremendous difference in this office. I want people to say at the end of whenever my tenure is, she was an outstanding district attorney.
What were those 5 goals, very quickly, if you can articulate?
Sure. We're in the midst of an amazing sea change in the criminal justice system with realignment, the shift of prisoners from the state to the county. I want accurate information. That's the goal this year. So I can make policy decisions that will keep our crime rates low and see our recidivism rate drop. The recidivism rate before realignment was 63%, 63.5% of those who went to state prison returned within 3 years. That's unacceptable. So I want to do my part to see that reduced, and I don't want crime to go up. The second thing I want to do is related to realignment, which is expand alternative sentencing courts, which are much more effective on recidivism rates. The treatment of those who are drug addicted, who are mentally ill, we could do a better job of those people in the criminal justice system. So I want to expand alternative sentencing courts. I want to protect my seniors. They're my seniors, right? In our community from the financial scams, particularly the ones where they get the phone call that says wire money because your grandson, your nephew has been arrested, and take that money to Western Union and wire it. I want to warn every senior through every mechanism I can to not fall for that. I want to do something about cyber criminals. Intrusion on our bank accounts is no different from a burglary. And we keep thinking of it as this mysterious thing that can't be solved. We can't find these people. We absolutely can find these people because we know the most vulnerable points of entry into our bank accounts. So I want to work with the banks to tighten up those entry points. I want to bring some people to justice publicly so that people stop think twice before they get involved in that kind of crime. I want to declare really war on tech crime. Finally, I want to really be a force in our environment. We've been given this beautiful land in Los Angeles County, but if we're not careful, it'll become polluted. We'll be back to the way we were in the 60s when children were playing outside and their chest hurt. And we've got to be very vigilant about making sure that this office particularly does something to protect our land, our water, our air from pollution. So I want to be a significant force in that area.
D.A. Lacey touched on prison realignment, so let's take you back to the summer of 2012 when she debated her opponent on this very subject. This is what she said back then.
Realignment has been or was passed very, very fast. And there wasn't a discussion with the stakeholders, and no one that I know of was more vocal than our office about saying that there was a problem here. I do think that there is going to be a problem with resources. We're not going to be able to add more staff. And so we've got to sort of figure this out. And I think the right answer is the way realignment is structured now. The sheriff is determining who gets out and when. I would rather that be put right back in the courtroom where the judge, where the prosecutor, where you have a probation report, and that's where you determine what should happen. I'm not sure it's realistic to think that we're going to be able to contract with outside state agencies to take some of our prisoners. I'm not sure where that support is going to come from. And I think it's a better project, it's a better idea for us to figure out how to deal with it here in the state of California. I think that what I'm going to ask for is that what was promised to be given. In other words, we will promise that a third of the money that the state prisons were using to deal with these prisoners would come to the county level. And so far that has not arrived. And so I would demand that the governor fulfill his promise.
You've drifted down into one of our issues, which was prison realignment. And you've given us kind of a pretty broad look at that and actually covered a lot of ground. The one question I did have was, in your opinion, looking at everything and some of the facts you just told us, is this realignment thing a success or is it a failure? The governor is holding tight to his position. What do you think as a law enforcement officer?
I think we don't have enough data. And in that respect, because when realignment was passed, we didn't put a measurement tool, a central data collection vehicle in place, how can anybody know? We can point to individual cases, we can point to numbers. You know, it's not enough to say, well, we've reduced the state prison population, so therefore crime is down. That's a fallacy. I am advocating and have already sent letters to 57 of the 58 elected district attorneys. I'm one of the 57, or 58, I should say, to come up with a statewide definition of recidivism. Recidivism needs to be defined as any return to custody, state custody, or anything in lieu of a return to state custody. So, for instance, if you can no longer go back to state prison, if you go to county jail, you've fallen off the wagon, you've recidivated. If you're flash incarcerated because of some technical violation, in my opinion, you have recidivated. Any alternative means, any consequence that results from you either violating the law again or not cooperating with your probation officer, or, you know, in my opinion, that should be counted. And so until we get a mechanism in place to accurately record this data, we cannot say with a straight face whether realignment is working. We can't say that. And we must not be afraid of the facts, the data, the information. We can't. If we don't put that in place, this is what's going to happen. Someone will commit a horrendous crime, and we've already had that happen in Northridge in 2 separate instances. And people will use the Willie Horton, what's called the Willie Horton method of saying, look at how bad things are, pointing to one case or a couple of isolated cases and saying, look, the law needs to be changed, realignment is a failure. And so I would think the proponents and the opponents and the naysayers of realignment would want a valid measurement tool to put in place to use to say, okay, these are the numbers. These are the accurate numbers, and either we have gone down in terms of that 63.5%, which I personally hope we have, or we've gone up, and we need to implement some legislation to fine-tune realignment so that it does protect the public safety.
Another hot-button issue is the death penalty. In the fall of 2012, D.A. Lacey addressed this issue at the final candidate debate before the election.
What's broken is the appellate process. There are many levels of review, and I am confident that those levels of review will work. And if there is someone who is innocent, I believe that the levels of review will catch it. I do not agree with the proposition that is on the ballot to repeal the death penalty. I believe that in some cases it is the appropriate punishment, and I say that from my experience on the death penalty committee for 10 years. Here's what people also need to know, that with regard to this county, these cases go to jury, and in every case we have sought death, the jury of 12 has agreed with us. That not one has not agreed with us. And so I think that the systems are in place here in LA County, and I would not be in favor of repealing it.
Another issue that's come back into the news in the last couple of days or so is the death penalty. The courts have ruled that California's 3-drug cocktail is not humane, and whatever it is we were trying to come up with is still not making the grade. It begs the question, I should say, is California ever going to actually execute any of the 700 inmates who are waiting there on death row? And are we giving families who were promised that the person who killed their loved one will be executed, are we giving them false hope?
Well, the subject matter of the death penalty, first of all, the answer is who knows, in the sense of whether it will be implemented again is not in the hands of really any one person. As you can see, it's very complicated. There's litigation going on in the court, there's the governor's position, and then there's the position of those of us who are in charge of asking for the death penalty and seeking the death penalty. So I don't know I cannot say whether the 729 or whatever the number is, 720, who are on death row will be executed. My feeling, though, is, at least with regard to LA County, those who are on death row, certainly during the time that I have been a part of that decision, it's been a very conscientious process. It is not automatic that we throw people up there. There are checks and balances. And so I'm convinced, first of all, that our people who we prosecuted had fair trials, were fairly represented, were adequately represented. And a jury determined that the death penalty should be the appropriate punishment. With families, I can only imagine. It must be really hard. I have met Kermit Alexander, who lost 3 or 4 members of his family. It's hard. It's hard to look, them in the face and know they've waited so very long, for justice, and to see us arguing about, the method in which the killer of his family should be put to death. There are alternatives out there, assuming the court is right about the cruel and unusualness of it. There are one-drug cocktails. And so there are all other alternatives, but this has become, once again, such a political fight, such that when at the end of the discussion, what it comes down to either is you're for the death penalty or against it. And oftentimes these things, such as cruel and unusual punishment, are really used to get to the result you want. So I would say that our office's position is going to be that I support, as I said during the campaign, I support the death penalty in those cases where, in our criminal justice system, prosecutors and jurors, 12 jurors, have said it's the right punishment for this crime.
And that concludes the first part of our 6-month review with DA Jackie Lacey. Come back next week for the conclusion. Thank you for joining us on this Newswire LA broadcast. To follow everything Newswire LA, look us up on Facebook and Twitter at Newswire LA. I'm your host, Chin Thomasanksi, saying good night, and we'll see you back here next week. Stay tuned for more news on this Westlake Signal station.